Hi, everybody. Grover at ChristianBody.net. Wanted to explain a little bit about the origins of ChristianBody.net because the place it starts has a lot to do with where it ends up. And we've had some interesting changes and revelations, I think, in the last couple months, and it relates to that. So I just wanted to touch base with you and let you know a little bit about that so you have a little more of a basis to evaluate things with. ChristianBody.net started about, I'm going to say 20 to 25 years ago. I'm not real sure of the date. It's been a long time. In a home church meeting in Roswell, New Mexico. And this was a wonderful home church meeting. This was a meeting at a house that looked up, it was on the hill outside of Roswell. And you could look out the big picture window and see the entire Pecos Valley down below you. And we used to gather there to have meetings and to pray over that Pecos Valley as far as that went, over Roswell and the areas in that vicinity. But this particular night, and it might have been a New Year's Eve or something. I think it was kind of a special occasion of some kind. We had about 40 people there, I'm guessing, and just had a wonderful spiritual time. We were celebrating the Lord. We were having food. We were fellowshipping. We were having testimonies. There were prophetic words being given. Scripture was being read and related to. It was just a great time. And you all know that have experienced those things, there's nothing really like that. That's just a wonderful experience that we need to maintain. We need to be, how we need to have meetings, in my opinion. So we had people there from different churches. We had, I think we had a pastor or two there from some of those churches. We had home church people. We had traveling people that were traveling through, and the Lord sent them over there, and just everybody you can imagine, different groups, different representative. It was a representative group of Roswell, New Mexico, and well beyond. So, but it was powerful, and in the process, we had a prophetic word given for, which ultimately became ChristianBody.net, and it was just simply that God was knitting and netting His body together, knitting and netting. And the understanding was He was knitting together people, as we were doing right there, in small groups, in families, spiritual families, in the local areas, and then He was networking them together. Now, that wasn't such a huge revelation as much as it was a confirmation, because hey, we were doing it. That's what was going on right there. We had all sorts of Christians, all sorts of people in there. Everybody was in one accord. We were praying together. We were seeking the Lord. We were praising the Lord. It was happening. That was what that meeting was about, and all the other meetings that we had, for that matter, at that time. But it was a confirmation. And even though we had been actually doing those kind of meetings on an ongoing basis, and others had in our community, in our area, it was interesting because we were just already doing those things. So it was the confirmation was there. It was, yes, you're doing it. This is from God, and we appreciated that. But it didn't change a whole lot of things because we were already doing those kind of things. It did allow us to continue on, and for years. Not too much going on, that's just what we did. That's what we were about, what Edith and I were doing, and many others. We were coming together, we were standing together, we were praising the Lord together. And it went on for some time, and then as the times changed, ultimately, some years later, the internet started to be accessible and usable, and I started building websites and learning how to do all that stuff. And it continued on, and we had people, that were attached and not attached at different times, but it wasn't we didn't make it a big deal. Where it changed was about 7 or 8 years ago. Jim and Mark and I were at a cowboy camp meeting up in Cuba, New Mexico, up on a ranch. And we'd gotten together in the past. We knew each other, and every time we'd gotten together, it was just a great spiritual, I'm going to call it electricity that we just had among us. We just sit down and talk about the Lord, and man, it was just great. And as the camp meeting was winding down, we were sitting at a table out under a tree there, and I suggested to Jim and Mark, I said, we need to continue this. We need to, how about we get together once a week online, because obviously we weren't going to do it face-to-face because we were different parts of the state. It wasn't likely for us to do that. So I said, why don't we think about getting together and have to be online one time a week and just continuing to share these things, because these are really rich. So a few days later, maybe a week later, I think it was Mark probably called me and said, hey, how about Monday night? And everybody was busy, so we had to schedule it, and we understood that. We were all busy. And I said, how about Monday night at 7 o'clock? And they said, let's do it. So we began to get together on a Zoom meeting at 7 o'clock on Monday night. And it was wonderful, just like our fellowship always had been. And about that time, within a week or two, it seemed like, they had been working at a Christian radio station up near Albuquerque, and it decided to not be in operation anymore. And so somebody said, well, I wish we could be connected to a radio station. And I thought about it. I had been involved in radio and TV as an engineer back in my college days, and I was familiar with it back then. Of course, things have changed a lot in the last decades. So, but I said, well, I don't know anybody that has one, and I know it's very expensive to start one, and it takes several years to get approval, and da-da-da. And I said, but I do know how to make an internet radio station, and I will set one up if you want me to. And they said, yeah. And so we did, and we began just putting the audios of our encounters, our Zoom meetings, on that internet radio station. And pretty soon there were other people that were joining us and adding to it, and it was really good. It's very, very powerful, and a lot of good testimonies, and we started interviewing people and stuff like that. Well, before too long, I was just thinking, I said, man, we're doing a video conference here. Why don't we just start putting that out, put the whole thing out there? And so we began to do that. And Mark started putting it on Facebook pages and Twitter pages, and we got our first YouTube channel, and we just began to do that. And it went along really, really well for some period of time, and then a place of change occurred. This was maybe 2 years in. I didn't keep track of timing, so don't hold me to any of this stuff. But anyway, somebody called us and said, hey, we have a friend coming in from California. Her name was Patricia Venegas. She was had a church and deliverance ministry and things out in California, and said she's coming to Albuquerque to do a conference. Could you guys live stream it? We said, wow, I don't know. We were streaming on Zoom, with our computers, but we really weren't set up to do that kind of thing. But we said, yeah, we'll give it a try and see what happens. Well, we set things up, and it didn't work too well, the stuff we'd set up. So we couldn't get internet properly, and, the normal stuff you deal with. So Mark ran the conference on his phone. Did a video on his phone on Facebook. And as he was doing it, he was just amazed. And he ultimately, after the session was over, maybe a couple sessions, he said, man, we've had like 10,000 hits on this thing. And that kind of rattled, I don't know about the other guys, it rattled my cage a little bit, because, before it was just, yeah, we're doing some stuff, we're putting it out there, and it's, people are responding here and there, and we're getting the gospel out. That's what we're supposed to be doing. But all of a sudden it was like, wow, this is real. And some things are happening here. And so to me, it kind of was like, well, we need to be more serious about this. We need to take this as something that is functional and doing some things and reaching some people with the gospel. And so where do we go from there? So that was where we kind of ended up at that point till we went on a little further. And I'm gonna change to a different channel here in a second and continue this. But I just want to tell you a little bit about the origin, how it started. That's how it started. But the fact was that we had this conference, and this will bring us up to date. This year, the 1st of January 1st, through the 21st, we got to be involved in a worldwide prayer conference. And many of the national and even international ministries, I think, were involved in it. And they asked us to do the program, the broadcast on it. And of course, that means me when we're coming to that. So I was the one who had to be there, because when you're doing these things, you have to be there all the time. You have to be paying attention. If there's any little issue that stems up, you need to be able to fix it before everybody notices it. And so I had to be, I'm saying had to, it was a privilege to be there for 21 days from an hour and a half to 2 hours a night, plus meeting with the people beforehand and, discussing production and how we're going to do this thing and schedules and things like that. I'll tell you, this was great. This was something I really needed, because I had been so busy in doing production for all of our other programs and things that I'd kind of gotten off track with my spiritual life. Not in a terrible way or anything. It's just that there was diversions, there's things that take you away from it, and that's what these things are sometimes. Some of these things are very intense. And so here I had to listen and be right there in the middle of all this stuff, 21 days for an hour and a half or 2 hours a night of prayer meetings with various people. And in that, this was a great place, someplace I really needed to be. The Lord really started speaking to me about moving back to the first love. And now when I'm saying that, I'm not talking about Ephesians 2, or the church at Ephesus, which is not Ephesians 2, in Revelation 2. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about some of the basis, the things, the starting place, the origin. I needed to move back toward that. And where we had been networking, which was the idea, knitting and netting, we'd been networking with a lot of people, many leaders, national leaders and things like that, which was wonderful. We're getting acquainted with those people and being able to help and to work with them has been quite an experience. But in my mind, the call had always been just to people, not state leaders and national leaders necessarily, but people in general. And I just felt like it was a time to reprioritize. Now, in saying this, we're not saying Jim and Mark and Cipriano and many others who are involved in ChristianBody.net, we're not leaving any of that stuff behind. We're continuing anything that's going on, because God has obviously done that. But personally, I needed to attend, if you will, to some of the past things, to get back into the vision. What was this about? Reconnect with the vision and see how we can move forward with that vision. So that was kind of the quick version right there. So I began to do that, and as I was seeking the Lord, I said, Lord, how do we do that? We're so remote physically. It's very difficult to have face-to-face meetings. We've been doing these Zoom meetings for 7 or 8 years, and realistically, Zoom meetings aren't as good as face-to-face. They're without question, but they are the tools that we have right now. And in the meantime, Zoom has, and other ministries like that have changed and upgraded, and there's some really effective things now going on with them. And I thought, well, I'll move into that. I'll check into that. So the last month or two, I've been working on learning some of the different things and getting some ideas, and feeling that the Lord was wanting to do that. The idea was, and it's on my screen there, interactive online fellowship. And by the way, we started Christian Body out on that, but we changed some technologies and it became less prevalent. We kind of got back to the, okay, I'm preaching and you're listening type mode, and I really didn't want us to be there. Many people are doing that, and that's part of the deal. But I felt like a lot of what we were called to do was to interact with the people and to engage them, not just preaching to them, but giving them a voice where they could be a part of what's going on. And in that, that's where the discipleship part occurs. It's when you have the communication, when you walk with people, when you encourage people on a personal basis and help them through things in their life. That's just where the rubber meets the road as far as discipleship is concerned. And Jesus said we were called to make disciples, not just converts, but we were to disciple the people. So that's always been near to my heart. So anyway, and then we have this other thing, and next session, I'm going to terminate this one here. Next session, we're going to talk about when you gather each one and some of the other scriptures that relate, that we see the historic church, I'm talking about the first century church, how they did some things that could be effective and maybe we should take a look at. So we're going to go off on that one here shortly. I'm going to stop this so it's not too long, and we will continue with the discussion talking about the historic church, the first century church, and some of the things that were effective for them. So blessings, and be right back.